Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
I like to talk and I like to tell stories, and I'm going to tell a short one. I promise it'll be short. But just again, most of you, I hope by now know who I am. You know that I like to take photos. I like to travel the world, engaging with IEEE volunteers, members, non-volunteers, non-members. This was in the Great Wall of China with my much beloved colleague Ching Li, who handles client services and the University Partnership Program in China. And I was visiting her this summer for the China Student Congress. So a little bit about me. I have an ENG degree just like you, but mine's in English. I have an MBA. I have an MBA in finance, which was pretty useless, except it opened doors that an English degree wouldn't open in a recession. I did some really fun financial writing. I went back to school and got my library science degree because I wanted to be an elementary school librarian. And here I am. Okay? And pretty compelling, I am a mom. And that really is infused throughout how I treat you, how I look at the world, and it's just part of who I am and part of why I so much love engaging with you. I have two very, very different daughters. Okay, this story today begins with Frank. Frank, gave you a little bit, the Frosh intern and so forth, master networker, branch chair extraordinaire, wonderful guy. He also understands the value of just getting people together to talk, to chat informally. So he had a dinner in April 2011, and I met some people that I'd seen before, but there was a new person, and it was Akansha. And she had some questions about women in engineering. Would it be good for Stanford? She'd like to get more involved. Conversation went along. She got more involved. Had an internship in Toronto over the summer. Emailed me and said, hey, I'd like to come visit New York. Can you introduce me to anybody at Columbia? Well, I happen to know somebody at Columbia. I know many people at Columbia. And I set her up with Natalia. And by the way, where were you staying? Well, I'm not sure. Come stay with me. Why not? So I live very close to the train and the bus station. She went in, met Natalia. And then because, you meet people with IEEE, you get to like them. So the next day, we all meet in the city, along with Boris, Natalia's little brother, Yelena, Natalia's mother. This creates a network where when my daughter wanted to learn about electrical engineering, Natalia put her up. When Boris wanted to learn about science and technology at my daughter's school, we flipped the switch on that, developed a relationship. The next month, Sections Congress, which happens every 3 years, leaders from sections around the world come together. I happened to be able to host this meeting in conjunction with that. I thought it was very exciting to introduce young students to the leadership, the volunteer network going forward. You see Frank, you see Akansha, you see Sean. Ajay might come here. He's at Amazon in the area, but I saw on Facebook he got promoted today, so maybe he's celebrating. I'm not sure. But anyways, oh, you're here. Congratulations. Yay, okay. Your name tag is back there. So anyway, so we're all, the network just keeps growing. Akansha is another one of those master networkers, and while she was there, she made a point to network with her peers, but also with higher ups. And one of the gentlemen, Peter Stecker, was running for IEEE president-elect. Indeed, he was elected president. So, it's just a relationship that who knows what might happen with that. She did a phenomenal job for us that year with women in engineering, collaborating with other groups. The heck was sweet. We're going to work together. We're going to collaborate. This was a program she put on that I went out to see. It was really kind of a culminating program for the year. Now, across the coast at Columbia, they're kicking butt. Their branch is really doing phenomenal work. They get this, this award, the Ziv Galil Award. How do you pronounce that? Zvi Galil? Zvi Galil. Okay. Awards always named after, dead luminaries, right? So just remember Zvi Galil. I go on vacation. What do I do on vacation? I meet with IEEE student branch officers. So this was Akansha and Sean were internship at Microsoft, and Jean and Stuart were employees. I had my niece and her husband and my children and the rest of my family here. Remember this picture. We're going to come back to it. Akansha goes off to win the first woman to win a Paul Baran Young Marconi Scholar Award. Now, I have to tell you, that award is based primarily on the fact that she is technically brilliant. Some of her publications, I'm happy to say almost all of them are with IEEE, remember that. But the other thing that they noted was her leadership ability and how her involvement with IEEE really did make a difference in how they viewed her application. So I'm at this, she invited me out very kindly, the IEEE let me go, and I'm working the room because, you know, I'm not always comfortable networking, but I like to do it. And I see this man, and I see his name tag, and what do you think it says? There you go. I couldn't believe it. I'm staring at this man. I thought he was dead. So I go over and I introduce myself and I say, I can't believe you're here. You know, this Columbia got this great award named after you. He had no idea. He was a past dean of Columbia. So he has a son in New York, goes and visits the branch, you know, tells stories and so forth. So the network just keeps building. Okay, I'm bored. I've had the same 13 schools in the US for 9 years, or 8 years at that point, and I want some fresh blood. I want an infusion. I want a branch that I think is probably doing some exciting stuff. So Professor Galil introduces me to this man, Mr. McLaughlin, Steve McLaughlin at Georgia Tech, who introduces me to this group, who are now seated with you. So again, the network continues. All throughout the year, my life is just connection after connection after connection. Sometimes they're fruitful. Sometimes they're just fun. Sometimes they take a lot of work. I mean, none of this happens seamlessly or effortlessly, but it's always personally and often professionally rewarding. So some of the things that have happened just in this past year. And then we go back to this picture. And I love this story because Jean and Akansha, this is the only time they had met at this dinner with, you know, my family around and so forth. And I hear this story when Akansha got the postdoc offer and accepted it and needed to find an apartment. She contacted Jean and said, you know, perhaps you could help me, you know, decide where I want to stay. And Jean invited her to stay. And Akansha flies up. It's Friday night. She stays over. She wakes up the next morning. And Jean goes, how do I know you? It didn't matter. The IEEE connection was strong enough that, okay, you're IEEE, sure. Come stay at my house, eat my food, you know, sleep in my bed, whatever. That's why we're at Microsoft Research, because the network works. That's why Georgia Tech is in the house. This is my IEEE, and it's yours today. And what you do with it is entirely up to you, but you're never not going to have what's in this room right now. So with that, I want to introduce Ajay, and we also have another IEEE past officer, Yi Lee, in the back. You met him last night. Some of you may have met him last night. So we've got a pretty nice panel going here. And if you gentlemen want to come up and take a seat, and I think we've got Sean is going to come up, and Stuart and Akansha. I put another chair there. And the questions that you had already, what wasn't answered? Or what burning question, what was the most important question that you would like to ask? You've got 5 other perspectives. And make the most of it, and we'll go from here.
My name is Yi. I work in Microsoft Azure. I am a CS major, but I am also part of IEEE.
I'm Ajay. We both graduated from Michigan, so go blue. Go blue! Except not for football. So I don't work at Microsoft. I work at Amazon on the Amazon fulfillment team. And so I graduated with a computer engineering degree. Yeah, I think that's it.
Does that mean I can ask you about all my missing packages?
Yeah, and broken packages.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean. I was the Columbia University Chapter president. I now work for Microsoft as a design verification engineer on Surface, working on the audio team. So if there's anything wrong, if you get a Surface, and you all should get Surfaces because they're amazing things. Awesome. Someone else is saying it too. Great. If there's anything wrong with the speakers or mics, do let me know.
Hi, everyone. I'm Akansha. I graduated out of Stanford a year ago with PhD, and I picked my master's also there. And I was the leader for IEEE Women in Engineering branch for Stanford, and I organized a lot of events there. And right now, I'm a postdoc at Microsoft Research.
See if my lapel mic works. Hi everyone, I'm Stuart Bottom. I'm a program manager here at Microsoft on the Cortana team. I graduated from UC Berkeley, where I was also the student branch chair, and I currently volunteer for the IEEE Young Professionals newsletter, Gold Rush.
Hi, third time. I'm BJ Narasimhan. Past IEEE I've been an IEEE volunteer since 2003, and different student branch roles and different roles in different regions, and happy to talk to you some more.
Hi, I am Frank Nothaft. I was a student branch chair at Stanford for 2 years, graduated in 2011, spent a few years in industry working at Broadcom and serving as chair of the IEEE Computer Society Orange County. Now I'm at UC Berkeley, and I think the question was originally, what was the IEEE moment that you can't forget?
Well, that was the original one proposed, but I'm saying like next year when I go into my senior year, if you could only do one event that you planned or took part of, what would be the one thing that you'd be like, don't miss out on this?
All that I remember, not all that I remember, but the most memorable one that I had was a barbecue that we had where, I don't know, there was like some raffle, and there was like, the raffle was kind of crazy, and I was decked out in like raffle tickets, and then like some chemistry student showed up, and it was like this huge sprawling crowd of people. That's all that I remember is like awesome.
If I can take that question as well, there were a couple years, actually it's an annual event now at the UC Berkeley IEEE student branch. A ski trip, multi-day ski trip. It's a 3-day, 2-night ski trip, and that's like hands down the most memorable IEEE events for me, were those ski trips. There's a lot of bonding that goes on when you are skiing and falling and sleeping in a cabin together where you're probably not supposed to have too many people in that cabin. We did put the entire student branch in the cabin, so very fun.
All right. For us, I'm actually going to say not our probably most successful event, but I always like to tell our students is we have 3 goals as IEEE chairs. It's to feed you, to remind you that engineering is fun, and to get you a job. And though this one isn't really so much as getting you a job, one of the most successful events I think we did was right before finals. What we did is we did a very low budget basic event, which our department helped us on, where we got the department to give us just a small amount of money for food. We asked everyone in IEEE, do you have any like really old game consoles that we could hook up to some of the meeting room TVs? And we did. And we got a ton of old game consoles, a ton of food, and everyone came and relaxed before their finals. And everyone was able to ask for questions about upcoming finals and get support. And it was, I think, something that brought the entire department together. It gave IEEE exposure, and was a very easy, very low-budget event that we were able to pull off.
So this is definitely not one of our most successful events, but something that I look back on was, so every year we get a couple people who are always a little interested in IEEE, but they're like freshmen and they're sophomore, they don't really know what's going on. And one of the events that we had was this speaker building project. So over like a single weekend, we would get a bunch of these chips, and we'd invite pretty much the entire EE student body, and we'd tell them, hey, do you guys want to build a speaker? And over the course of like I think 2 or 3 weeks, they went from just learning how to like solder things, because they haven't taken the beginning courses yet, to having like fully functional speakers and
that they could brag about.
Yes, that they could brag about, and more importantly, get more exposure to like meeting people in IEEE and getting that networking opportunity, and really kind of like get them into see what IEEE does. And we didn't get the greatest amount of attendance, but we met some really really cool people, and more importantly, we were able to show them how IEEE was able to both educate people as well as bring them together and meet more people in the branch.
And they're like major and everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How would you do? It's good. Let's not all answer all of them. How would you define a successful student branch? Like, what determines success? Is it like number of students who are involved? Is it getting students jobs? Like, what do you think made you feel that your branch was successful?
I'll take this one, unless somebody else wants to. Sure. So I know that for a couple years, our branch had difficulty with members. I think that there are definitely times where it's difficult and somewhat disappointing when you don't see as much engagement by the members in your group. But what I've always found to be a good metric is to see the amount of engagement not within the group, but like the outward engagement. So like the events that are held. I know that we used to host a ton of corporate events where companies would, through us, be able to communicate to students. We would have a lot of volunteering activities. We would have just a lot of different outreaches in which it wouldn't necessarily increase our membership base, but it would increase both our exposure as well as an appreciation of the things that we do.
I'd also just want to tack on that it is normal for branches to have year-to-year variation. So it's very easy to think, oh no, we didn't do as many events as last year. Oh no, we didn't do this much. This must be a sign of a problem. When I first joined Columbia's IEEE, I believe Chris is the exact head count, but I think there were only 5 people. And now we're doing slightly better. I think we have like 12 people. But the thing is that first year we didn't have that many events. We did have a couple of nice ones like a tour of Brookhaven National Labs, but by and large we probably could say we'd count events held by semester or by year, not by month. But the thing is that year we started building up contacts to various companies. We started laying the groundwork for the next year. And each year progressively there's been a year-over-year improvement. So some years are going to have lulls, some years you won't be able to get speakers, but that doesn't mean you weren't successful. As long as you feel like something's been accomplished, and even if that means just making your students happy by giving them food, you've done something right.
And I'll add to that. One thing to keep in mind is that it's really about fostering a sense of community. Community is not something that's easy to measure. It's somewhat subjective, but anytime that you have someone who you've never seen before show up to your meeting, that's good. Anytime you have a group of people who show up to your meeting all the time, that's awesome. Anytime that you have people who are coming to your meetings who are coming from outside of your field or even outside of your university, which occasionally happens, that's really good. I don't think you need to, it's good to focus on things year to year, month to month, and so on. But, especially as volunteers, you have to revel in all of the small victories. And any time that you're able to expand your community or really deepen the strength of it, that's something to reflect on as a big victory and as a success.
Adding to that, I would also add the fact that, Frank, whenever you're bringing a volunteer in who starts coming up with new events, you don't want to compare it to last year's event. So when he brought me in, women engineering was not something we were focusing on. I explained to him that this is a really important cause. I want to do events around this. And he gave me the flexibility to do things and budget and figure out what I want to do. I think there's a lot to be said, not just around that topic, but in general. I brought in people who were excited about puzzle hunting, or now Marcina was describing to me they're doing makeathons. So every time someone comes in, they bring new ideas related to what is exciting to them. And I think there's value in every volunteer bringing in new ideas. And that's a metric of success, I believe.
In general, one thing about events is that there's going to be some that are smaller than others, and that's okay. I know that in all sorts of programming type events that we do, and I call programming whether it's talks or meetups or career things or whatever, is that you might have a room of 4 people, and then the next time you'll have a room that's overflowing capacity, more than 100. And that's okay, because maybe those 4 people are the 4 people that don't usually come to all your events, but they came to that one because you hosted it sort of for them. And so identifying the unmet needs in your institutions, departments, communities is really important, and reaching out to those people is really meaningful to them, because it gives, everybody has, whether it's IEEE or any other organization, everyone wants like a hook to hang their hat on. And if you throw the same types of events all the time that gather 100 people, not everyone will have a hook. So just keep that in mind.
So go ahead.
So you all have a pretty unique perspective because you've both led and then stayed engaged and seen how things change over time. What makes strength in a student branch endure from year to year?
I'll take that. I think it's the friendships between the members and the officers, just the participants in the student branch. Especially as people graduate and move on, friends look out for each other. So, ignoring all the metrics of how many events and how many, what was our satisfaction on the surveys and whatever, I think, ultimately, and you'll hear this theme through the answers to the last question, I think, as well. It's all about the people, right? And the friendships that, I personally developed through my time in the IEEE student branch. I'm still good friends with a large number of those people. And, we look out for each other. So if somebody needs a job, I'll hook them up with a reference, right? And vice versa. And it's not just about if somebody's looking for a job, it goes beyond that sphere. So I think in terms of the strength of that community, it's not just about are you taking care of them on a professional level? It's are you taking care of them on a personal level? And so it's the friendship that takes you beyond that versus just, oh yeah, we're in this professional organization and I sort of have this obligation and there's this, give and take, right? So I think that's really important to consider.
I guess from like a procedural standpoint, something that I've always found to be successful was being able to be consistent every year. One of the things that we usually do is we have an officer handoff. Every year, or after every semester, the old officers, they have a write-up, and they usually have a write-up, and sometimes it's the write-up from their previous engagement and they appended their own experiences. But I found that if being consistent is really important. Having sometimes you try events and it doesn't work out. You take those learnings and you carry it to the next semester to the new officer who's taken over your role. And that's always been really helpful in learning what hasn't worked before and trying out new things that could work.
And just going out that is, I don't think you need to shoot for the moon every year. Like for Michigan, I think it was better when we had like consistent incremental updates, at least from when I was there. And just like making sure our fundamentals were solid before we like spread ourselves way too thin or stuff like that. So yeah, agile. Fundamentals and agile.
Yeah, small, consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And just building on Stuart's comment about the people, it is totally okay for you to have a couple of events that are more for you guys as your board than it is for your members. And I say that because at Columbia, we have a recurring event, which is a liquid nitrogen ice cream event. The thing is that the liquid nitrogen ice cream event requires you to actually make batter the night before. So our great team building effort is let's stick the entire IEEE board in a single dorm kitchen and try to get them to cook. And watch what happens. We have some of our probably best memories of IEEE. And you can see Shani kind of just putting her face in her hands over some of those memories. But some of our best memories as an org and some of the best friendships we developed were those kind of informal gatherings. So it's not that, you don't have to be, it's all about the members. If we put $1 that's not toward our members, that's a problem. No, it's not. If you're taking care of your board members, you're ensuring the overall health of your chapter.
More questions? Otherwise, let's act as moderator and add questions from the board.
Yes.
So someone asked this earlier, and it kind of ruins the question because the ratio up there isn't good. But they asked earlier why you think so many women like step up to leadership in the IEEE. Like if you they're saying that the IEEE general membership is only about 10% female. But if you look at like the ratio of this room, it's definitely not 10%. Why do you think that is?
Only female on the panel, I guess. I believe it really boils down to, in general, it's about building the pipeline in any school. I think with Chris as mentors, and I think even at Stanford and some of the other schools, if you have had great role models, it really helps. And I think the other thing is that as females, I get excited about being able to do things for people and make impact and make contributions to people's lives. And that's probably the reason what attracted me to doing things in IEEE, because I saw the impact happen for a lot of lives. And I flipped the question back, why are you stepping up for this?
I guess I feel like just to get where I am today, I've always had to work really hard to prove myself. So this is me just stepping up even more and just prove myself and try to make a difference so that other people have it easier or can prove themselves to the point where it gets that girls don't feel like they have to prove themselves anymore and it's just accepted.
That's another very good reason as to we are trying to make lives for our next generation easier by taking on the challenge ourselves. Anyone else wants to contribute?
I wanted to mention something I saw in it was another interesting talk I saw where they asked young people to draw what they thought of when they heard the word scientist. And, over time, everyone used to draw Einstein. For some reason, Einstein holding a test tube, and I don't think Einstein generally held test tubes, but that's generally what people drew. And I think that, there are signs these days that opinion is changing, is that they see, a lot of women coming up in science and engineering and people from different backgrounds, depending on, the field coming up in science and engineering, cultural backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds and all sorts of things. It's a good incentive for us to be very visible in our communities, to make it easier for that next generation to go, oh, there's a person like me doing this. I think that's very powerful. And so I don't know if a lot of you have outreach incorporated into your branch's activities. I know that we do through some of our work at Stanford, and we used to at University of Ottawa as well, through either your own organization or partnering. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, so if there's some other thing, but getting your officers involved in that kind of process to show that, what are the career paths out there, and the fact that there's all kinds of people on those paths is something that we sort of, it's interesting, but it's just like that is a very powerful message when all a child thinks of when they see a particular person is this or that, and then you have the power to change that even today. So I think it's good to get that out there. Just being who you are and doing what you do is really powerful.
More questions?
So what do you guys think about taking a gap year, and do you think it's detrimental when you're applying to a job or grad school later on?
Did anyone take one?
When you say gap year, you were saying
So like
go climb mountains? Or?
Yeah, like do something completely random, like go travel, like learn something like weaving or something in Mexico.
I'll take that question. I didn't take a year off, but I took almost a month off before I joined Microsoft Research.
Wait, are you saying, just to clarify, are you saying within your school year? Like, are you saying between like junior and senior year type thing, or after graduation?
Right after you graduate.
Yeah, after I graduated, I took a month off. I decided that I had done my PhD. This was one of the biggest achievements of my life, so I wanted to go travel Europe.
I think the problem that you might have with this sort of thing is like, that you think you might have with this sort of thing is there's a gap on your resume, right? That's what you're really concerned about. That's why it's called a gap year, I suppose, is that there's a gap where you weren't working. And I had this, for personal reasons, I took I took actually several months off between, so I was going to go actually to Cambridge 1 year, and I deferred that position for a year for personal reasons. But actually, like, it's interesting. I think during your gap year, there's a lot of other stuff that will show up, maybe not on your resume, but in your conversations that will make you an interesting and more well-rounded and, like, cool person. So for applying for grad school and stuff like that, like, I think that long periods of times, sometimes will. It really depends on the person. I think people who do that are very narrow-minded, but it does happen, and, we don't live in a perfect world. But I always tell people that, like, your credentials from when you're undergrad and you showed yourself as a student and as a leader and all these things, they don't go away. Like, you didn't fundamentally change as a person because you went to whatever it was a year later. And a lot of people say the same thing about, after grad school, and this is funny, right, because you're not taking time off, but like after grad school, if you go into industry, some people think that's the death knell for academia, right? Like, you're never going to be a professor. But I'm sure all of you have professors at your institutions who spent time in industry. And so don't let people who tell you never, like, get into your head. Because some people, yeah, will, because, that's just what their opinion of people is, and that's who they are. But I don't know. I mean, if you want to and you need a break, do it. Like, take it. If you have the luxury to do it and you have time to see things, there's no time like when you're young to see things, right? So.
Yeah, and I actually have two good friends who have done that. One went to live in actually Brazil. So he took the summer off to bike across the U.S. and then spent about half a year to a year living in Brazil before going back to grad school. And another friend who actually took the Trans-Siberian Railroad, from one side of Russia to the other side of Russia, and then spent another few months just living around in Europe, crashing in friends' houses. And I know both of them reflect back very fondly on the experiences. I mean, I think the thing is, as Vijay said, the people who are going to look down, the people who are going to be dismayed that you've done that, probably aren't the type of people that you would want to work with from a work-life balance perspective. It reflects a bit of a closed worldview, and it's like, to quote Mark Twain. Mark Twain has a beautiful phrase about this that I can't remember exactly, but he essentially really advocates very strongly for this, and he was a fairly smart person. So I'm going to go with Mark Twain on this and say that it's a good idea.
And just building on that slightly, although this will only probably catch a couple of you in a corner case, a lot of times when you'll get jobs coming out of college, they'll ask, when do you want to start? And they'll give you a flexible start date. It's really easy to be told by people, oh, you should start the day after you finish college because you want to show that you're interested in the position. Don't do that. No. Honestly, once the company has offered you a job, if you say, I want to take the summer off, I want to take 6 months off because I want to go learn something, I want to, in my case, it was as simple as, I'm from New York City and this was going to be my last time in New York before I moved out to Washington. I wanted to go to all the museums one more time, I wanted to see all my friends one more time. That is a perfectly valid reason to say, you know what, I'm going to start in September. So don't feel pressured to say, I want to start the first day after college. Though, if you want to, feel free.
My advice would be just be able to talk about that in terms of any job interview. So, have a good understanding and a mental framework for describing that to an interviewer, because, I guarantee you'll be asked about it by some recruiters. And so, if you spent the summer playing video games, you can spin it and say you were researching new methodologies for human-computer interaction or something like that. But at least be able to talk about it. So.
I think we had a question over there.
Well, I was gonna say, talking about the gap year, is that more difficult with engineering? Because in a year, if you moved somewhere completely different or took up weaving, would it be bad because engineering is constantly changing? So do you think that's a factor at all?
I don't think engineering changes that quickly, but it does. But the fundamentals, the way you can catch up, it's I know one of my coworkers at Amazon, he took 1 year off, switching to Amazon. He's not a worst programmer. He's up to date now. I feel like as long as you know the fundamentals, if you survived 4 years of undergrad, catching up is not a big deal.
That said, there will be some kind of you probably don't remember things that happened 1 year ago in college exactly. I mean, as I mentioned, I cannot remember solid state. It is some blur that happened to me at some point. So stuff will atrophy, it's not a big deal. You can easily relearn it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this perspective. I don't think it's on your mind right now, but as females, often there will be personal things like having a kid or getting engaged or something like that, where you will want to take some time off, and it's perfectly okay to do that. So don't be obligated to be on the job. Now, having said that, if you want to be on the job, then that's completely up to you. And you will catch up on your skill set and other things as you need to. Have confidence in yourself, go to your employers and be ready to explain that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Guys can take time off for that too.
Yeah, I took a month off for my wedding, and my manager didn't care.
Other questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Before, and certainly Talia, I'm going to sit over there. I asked them kind of like what makes you stand out in terms of getting a job, because all of you have really impressive jobs. So kind of like to the other people on the board, what do you think really made you get the job over your peers?
I think for me it was because it was like my bias for action and ownership, using Amazon tenants. That's what because I'm not a CS major, I didn't have like a 4.0. Just like the ability for me to get stuff done on my resume, like mentoring a first team and stuff like that. I think that's what put me out. Because I think like everyone, after you graduate, you have the basic skill set, and just having that like drive and determination to get further.
Yeah. So. One thing so I actually did hiring for my group, and so I'll echo what he was saying. Like a big thing that we would look for is, what people tend to refer to it as tenacity or grit. There was a person who we hired who on paper was not the strongest candidate out there, but you could tell that, from this person's background that, they had, they were the type of person who, even if they didn't understand something, would work to understand it, would try to master. It's like they had, they could kind of demonstrate from their resume work ethic, and that, it's hard to get across. I don't know the exact correct way, but the other thing is, I think if you can show a bit of extra depth in some segments of your life, and like a lot of us who are here, we're here because we have shown depth in our interests, in our professional career by being heavily involved in the IEEE. So, by being here, that's a strong step in the correct direction. And that always reflects strongly.
I'll add to that. I'll actually attest to that. So when I interviewed at Microsoft Research, one of the things that they found really interesting was that I had taken on leadership roles for women in engineering, and had fundraised almost $10,000 for events over 2 years. And I had taken initiative on making that happen. So taking initiative, showing passion, showing interest in things that impact people's lives shows to a manager that this person will actually take time and want to make things happen.
And just to add on to that, you're already in a really, really good position. You're all members of IEEE. You're all student leaders. You have the ability to go in and I mentioned this last night, you have the ability to you're rare because you have the ability to cold call into companies and say, hi, we'd like to have an event with you. And you can build on that relationship both for your chapter and for yourself. I got my first interview at Microsoft because I managed the Microsoft events for Columbia's IEEE. That's totally okay. You can get professional gains from being an IEEE. So that's a very good way to make yourself stand out. And definitely building on adaptability. When I was an intern here, one of the things that they did to me is they said, so we want you to work with this. And it was a block of C# code. And I have never touched C# in my life. And after the internship was done and they offered me the job, I asked why. And they said, because we gave you something you didn't know, you took the time to learn it, and you did it. That kind of ability is something that all companies really want. So if you're on an interview and they say, can you do this? You shouldn't lie and say you can if you can't, but you can say, no, but I promise you I can find out.
Different scenarios for the jobs, and actually my IBM recruiters described this experience of recruiting me.
Yeah, do the mic.
Go talk to the crowd. Oh, okay. Sorry. So I had the honor of hearing my IBM recruiters talk to me about talk to others about what it was like to hire me. And what they described is basically like a bundle of energy jumping in their site at the career fair and basically telling them why I need to get that job and why it's my dream job and why they need to hire me. And of course, after that, technical competency really helps. But basically, high energy is what we look for. I recruited for IBM after that. And every time, like I was telling one of the groups here, we want to look for a person who will enthusiastically tell you about their projects, will tell you, like Sean said, that they will take on whatever challenge you throw at them, no matter what it is, even if it's something they don't know. And you will get that a lot. Like for me at IBM, they gave me Perl. I never worked with Perl before. Python is nicer, yes, it is. So energy, ability to learn, know what's on your resume, and describe it with enthusiasm and how it applies to the work. And then for Qualcomm was a little bit different. So this is where the networking really comes in. I had a contact at Qualcomm, and I told him I was looking for a job. So he literally handed my resume over to the manager. And from there, I was talking to the manager. Once again, you have to be enthusiastic. Half the things on the job description I did not actually know at the time. For example, they used System Verilog, I did VHDL, and things like that. And I basically was like, I'm really willing to learn. This is why I can learn this, because this is relative. You know, you explain. You make them understand, and from there, I got a full interview, and things went pretty well. So really, be energetic. Don't be down on yourself. Don't point out your flaws. Tell them why you're awesome.
And after you put your resume in that box, if you don't hear back in a couple of weeks, give your recruiter a call. Say, I really want this job, and I haven't heard back yet. And that's one way you can show energy.
Sure. Well, so I know it's a really cliched thing to say, you know, be unique on your resume, because, you know, everyone says that, right? Like, find that one thing that differentiates you from somebody else, whether it be like a project or, you know, something that you did in your personal time. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to find that thing because you feel like, you know, everybody's taking the same classes that I have, everybody's in the same club and stuff like that. I found that it's always important to, you know, figure out, look at the things that you have done and find and really understand and be able to explain clearly that project and what and how that was different. One of the things that I did when I was a freshman was write this karaoke machine in assembly. Not exactly, you know, special or anything, but like I went into like great detail about like how I did stuff that I don't remember now. And like I remember talking for hours about like how, well, not hours, but like maybe like 20 minutes in like an hour interview. No like technical questions in that interview, you know, before that, but like it was, they could just see your passion. They could see how, you know, interested you are and how you approach problems. And those are the things that, you know, the people who recruit, managers, look for. Somebody who is able to tackle something that's, you know, that is different and being able to like find good solutions and solve them.
Yeah, I've done a bit of interviewing for various things like scholarships, and I hire for also like people who do the social events in the dorm, and I've been on the other side of the table interviewing and then also interviewed. Most recently, I guess I was on the interviewing side for the United Nations Foundation. So basically, I was interviewing my successor, whoever that was going to be. And it was it's a really interesting experience because I think that like it's daunting. I'm an extrovert, right, obviously. And so it's really daunting because I think to be a leader as you guys are in other organizations I've worked in, you don't have to be an extrovert. That's really important for anyone who's introverted or has that tendency in the room to know. And that's okay. And the idea of energy and enthusiasm doesn't mean that you have to be like, like all the time. So I think the thing that really comes across though in like an interview process is even if someone's introverted, they walk out of the room and like you want to create that impression like that person was a rock star. The person that just walked in here just like rocked it and then walked out. And I don't know, I think that's like a really cool thing, but don't equate the two. Don't be someone you're not during the interview because you think that you need to be like turned on crazy like, you know, someone who you're not. It's difficult and it probably comes across as not who you are, but like being really, really comfortable in your own skin is just such I mean, it's for any sort of like, when you're trying to foster a relationship with someone. And so the idea of going up to the person, I've seen so many times that there's these career fairs and it's just like someone walks up and it's like, hi, I'm a CS student, here's my resume. I like usually don't even give my resume to people and I'm like just talking to them and then they're like 2 minutes later, they're like, give me your resume. Like I need to see the details about all the awesome things that you're talking about. And so like, I don't know. I think when you go up and like you just show genuine interest and enthusiasm, oftentimes when we're choosing between two candidates who are really like good and both really good, we say, who's more interested in this position? I recently got turned down for a position because someone else was really much more interested than I was. And when I heard who it was, I'm like, yep, that person was way more interested than I was. Like all the power to them. Like they're going to do an awesome job in that role, more so or equally so than I would certainly. So all of those things expressing interest and like why it's a good fit for you, why you're a good fit for them, and it doesn't have to come across in any kind of like extroverted, very talkative way. It can be very subtle and understated, and it's still beautiful when it's who you are.
So one thing that I'll just kind of add on to that, people often say that interviewing is as much for you as it is for the company, and that is entirely true. It's like you should act as yourself. Ideally, you are a very good fit with the group that you're working with. If you aren't a good personality fit with your boss and your teammates, it'll be difficult for you to work as well as you possibly could. And kind of a way that this segues back to the interview process is, one of the things that really would frustrate me when I was interviewing with candidates is, it's fine to admit that you don't know something. It's preferable to admit that you don't know something. It's like we worked in a somewhat esoteric area, and I would, quite frequently ask people, questions that I knew would be out of their reach because, a big problem for us was figuring out, okay, we have like problem that we've never seen before. How do we solve it? So, it's some of the time it's about seeing how do you think when you've been presented with a problem that you haven't seen before. And it's also, when you do hit something that's at the end of your capabilities, it's good if you know what your limits are. Someone who understands what their limits are and says, I'm at a point where I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to find someone who can help me, is a lot better than someone who doesn't know that they're doing something that they don't actually know how to do and really messes things up. It's like we would quite often have people come to us and be like, I am an expert at C++. And it's like, if you're finishing your undergrad degree, you are not an expert in C++, like flat out rule. So it's like, it's good to be humble. It is reasonable to be humble. And when people see that you're struggling, but you're trying to work, you're trying to work towards things, they'll tend to want to help you out. And they probably expect this to be slightly beyond your capabilities, and they're probably looking to see how you think.
I'll add just one more dimension to the whole thing, which is not discussed on the panel yet. As a female, when you go into the team, you do want a manager who will look out for you and who will champion your cause. And you have to build that relationship over time. So in the interview, when you're looking out for yourself, do try to figure out whatever questions are on your mind. Don't outright ask that I want a 6-month vacation, but do figure out what the work culture is like and what the work culture this manager promotes, because this is the person you will negotiate with when you want something over the next 3 or 4 years, whether they'll help you develop your career or resolve issues that you have with your peers who are not treating you well, maybe.
Next question.
More questions. There are a lot of questions on the board.
So you guys, a couple of years ago, were basically sitting in our seats. Did you guys get any piece of advice that was really, really good, or do you have any piece of advice that you wish you would have gotten that you would like to share with us? You could answer both or one.
So I'll take this one. So completely unrelated story, but it'll lead to something. So recently I just got this awesome credit card. It's like made out of metal, and I was like super excited. I was like holding it because it just felt different. Yeah, the Chase Sapphire. Oh my gosh, okay. Anyways.
And if you're watching right now, you can dial this number, right?
So this is like the first card that I've actually like signed on the back, because I know you're supposed to, but I never did because my parents never did, so I never did. Anyways, so I was playing around with it, and I was showing off to my friends, and they're like, so okay, a backstory to that. I write my eyes like really loopily, so they look like O's instead of I's, and my name is spelled Y-I-L-I. So when I was like showing it up, they're like, "Why'd you sign your card as YOLO?" You know. That being said, I'm not saying, hashtag YOLO, do whatever you want, but one of the things that I've come across a lot is, there's always these exciting opportunities, and the thing is, a lot of these opportunities have risk. Like working for a smaller company that has a potential much higher growth, and much higher risk. Like you might not get paid as much. The company might fail. You might have to go find another job. You might have to learn something that you're completely unfamiliar with. And I think that's something that a couple years ago, I had a couple choices, and I always chose the conservative one just because I thought, this is, a good opportunity, I should do this. And now looking back, and after making different choices after that, I realized that that was not always the best choice. So it's important to understand that, maybe taking a risk is scary. What if I choose to work for a company that I have almost no experience in, don't know what to do, while there's this other company that's like totally fine, really safe, it's been around here forever. But we're all young at this point. We can basically almost do whatever we want and still keep on going forward. And that's something I would recommend.
To add on that, the advice I got recently was always be uncomfortable. Not extremely uncomfortable, but don't need to go in a cardboard box and something. But just constantly challenge yourself. Because I know for a short time I was doing the comfortable path at work. But then when I got thrown on a new project, that's where I really got to figure out what I need to develop and what strengths I have that I can foster more, instead of just being constantly comfortable.
And on the topic of constant comfort, uncomfort in general, your first 6 months at any company might be rough. There'll be a lot of kind of stress. There'll be a lot of, I can't access this. People are using acronyms that I don't understand. There'll be a lot of acronyms. Just be prepared for that in your first couple of meetings. And it's going to feel awkward because you're going to have to go to your boss. You're going to have to go to other members of your team and ask for help a lot. That's totally normal. And you might be feeling, again, in the first 6 months, I don't know what I'm doing here, what's going on. Don't judge it during the first 6 months. When you get to the 6-month mark, start then going, okay, am I happy here? And when it gets to the 1-year mark, that's when you can start doing the more, am I happy here? Do I think this is the right path for me? And if you're hitting the 1-year mark and you're still not happy, that's when you might want to think, you know what? This is my first job. I can go somewhere else. And it's okay. Or if you're working in a large company like a Microsoft, like an Amazon, most of those companies have internal transfers that are much easier than applying for another company completely. So if you're not happy in your current role, there are usually lots of other options that you have.
I think the most important advice that I got was develop your communication and networking skills. As an engineer, the technical skills will constantly evolve. The two classes that I look back and really remember from Stanford's program was technical writing and public speaking that I've constantly worked on developing. Even now I'm taking improv classes. Just communication skills are really key for you to build your career forward, and being able to articulate what you're doing in interesting and compelling ways will be really important. So the projects that I have done so far, if you can spin them off, saying that I played video games, but they are methodologies to investigate human-computer interaction. That counts for a lot. That counts for a lot. Why networking? Networking because the people you connect to will have resources and opportunities that you can connect to next. So the way I landed Microsoft Research, I'm an electrical engineer by background, but I landed at Microsoft Research because I knew someone who knew someone who was willing to have faith in what I could do. I don't have the right training to do this sort of stuff.
I'll just add to that. Always be questioning things. So I don't, I mean that in terms of a couple dimensions. So first off, to Sean's point, if you're going to be new to a company and not understanding things, you might as well try and understand things as fast as possible. And it's amazing what your fellow employees can help you with in terms of saving you time and energy and effort. Do the legwork beforehand, so you can say, well, I checked this and I checked this and I checked this, and if they don't know the answer, then go figure it out yourself, and then go tell them the answer. So always be asking, how can I make things better? How can I change the way things happen around here? How can I improve life, not just for myself, but for my coworkers? And that goes a long way in terms of your career and your visibility, as we say here at Microsoft, or the people's impression of you and how much of an asset you are to the company. Taking that philosophy into your life always helps you be evaluating things and asking, how can I make things better for myself, and ultimately increasing your quality of life.
And just as a note, a very specific thing you can do that will do that is if you get onboarded to a company and you notice there are deficiencies in the training, like you realize, hey, there is no documentation for where this was, and you start building up your own documentation and start sharing it. That's a really easy way to be a very positive force for your team, and it will help you and it'll help everyone after you.
I'm going to inject, this is completely different because we skewed down a very work-oriented path. And this is not a piece of advice I got in this forum. But we talked earlier about there's a lot of opportunities that are come up and they involve some risk, and that's true. I think, I don't know, there's a few different ways of putting this advice, but the one that my sister phrased it is she said to me, VJ, people are human beings. And I said, that is really powerful advice, and I'll give the context as to why it happened, is that, as I mentioned to some of you, I was supposed to start at Cambridge in 2007, and I couldn't. There was, my father was really ill, and every single piece of paper that I got from Cambridge, from the Commonwealth Scholarship, et cetera, said, you cannot defer, you can only decline. There's no way that you're going to get this. The chances of you getting it again are slim, none. They won't be there. And then they do that sort of thing because they don't want people, for whatever reason, to just flippantly sort of cast something, cast the opportunity aside and say, oh, really, actually, no, I want to do it a year later or whatever. And I just called them and they're like, what, are you kidding me? Of course. Yeah, just defer it for a year. That's fine. And then it was funny because I had psyched myself out, and it was 3 days before I was supposed to climb on a plane to England, and I wasn't confident enough in myself because I was such a rule follower, my whole life, and it said something on a piece of paper. And it really was it seemed like a one-time opportunity to me, and I had to sacrifice it against something else, but it was false. It was a false dichotomy. There was no sacrifice to make. Because I took the year, I got involved in the solar industry, later that year through an internship that I was able to do. I made a new opportunity for myself. I walked into a building at my university and saw a poster for the Fulbright Scholarship. I would have never wound up in the US had that not happened. So some opportunities will close and some will open, but yeah, people are human beings. And so opportunity will strike in your life and tragedy will strike in your life. And there's never, I don't think that there's a reason that you have to trade one against the other, and you don't have to psych yourself out so much that bad stuff is going to happen to you because you don't seize every opportunity that comes. If for some reason you're not ready, if for some reason there's something else, and it could be a positive thing. You get 2 really awesome offers and you're like, Google will never offer me a job again. Their acceptance rate is so low, but I also got admitted to this really cool grad school and I don't know which one to pick. Pick one. And then, I don't know, good things will happen later. Maybe it won't be that opportunity, maybe it'll be something else, but things work out, and don't psych yourself out this never is never, and people understand when you decline or change your mind. So powerful advice, but not always for academics or career-wise, but keep it in mind.
So, yeah, it's difficult to follow that. He did a really good job. the one thing that I guess I will say, and this kind of piggybacks on what Akanksha was saying, one thing that I've learned kind of through osmosis from the IEEE is that beyond really just working on your communication skills, a really valuable skill to build is the ability to communicate effectively with people who don't share your background. And especially in technology, it's always very it's obvious that it is important to be able to communicate clearly with other people who are working on the same problem as you, because this is a problem that we always face when we're working on a group project or when we're working on a team in industry. But ultimately, the people who advance into leadership roles, whether technical or business leadership or research leadership, are the people who are able to communicate their message, their work clearly to audiences who share a similar technical background or who don't share a technical background at all, but understand the market, the market dynamic or the greater problem that they're trying to solve. So that's a really important skill. I've had the pleasure of seeing some really incredible speakers who have kind of demonstrated this in action, and it's always just something to think about. If you're writing a paper, if you're putting a presentation together, how would I explain this for a different audience?
I can tack something onto that, which is that there's more. It's not always a formal opportunity. Science communication, engineering communication isn't always a formal opportunity. To give you an example, I talk a lot, right? But every opportunity I have and someone asks me, what do? I tend to just not stop at, I'm a material science student. I explain not in gory detail, but I have my little elevator pitch about what it is that I'm looking at, and I have little analogies I can draw on stuff. So when I was, every plane ride, and you have that person next to you that asks you what you do, that's an opportunity to practice science communication. Every bus trip is an opportunity to practice science communication. Every time you're asked to speak to a class. When I was just left my undergrad, I had, was putting together this sort of I was working on this idea for a frequency agile antenna for mobile systems as a result of some of the work I did in my undergrad. And I was working out at the gym, and I was in the locker room, and someone asked me, what do you do? And I told him about this idea, and et cetera. And he said, well, isn't that funny? I run this grant program in the government, and we fund exactly this kind of thing. Why don't you come into my office? And so telling people about your ideas and about what you do, it's not, sometimes it's gonna go over people's head and sometimes not, but seeing the way that you think is really valuable from a public perspective. I think that just the fact that we know about the scientific method, that we know about how things work, and being able to communicate that to people is really important. And I don't know if it's a duty. I'm Canadian, so engineering and duty are very intertwined together in our ethos. But I think it's really something that we should all try and do, because we can learn things from other people, and we have a responsibility, I think, to educate them about the things that we do. And I think that every opportunity that you have to talk to someone who doesn't know what you're doing, whether it's, here's another funny example. On my first date with my wife, she asked, what do you do? And she was a cancer biology PhD student, so she didn't know about optical properties of nanostructures, but I went into it for a good 15 minutes. And she said, I think I saw this paper in Nature Communications that looks like what you do, and she sent it to me. And I thought, that's a cool idea. And then based on that paper and other work that I had done, I have a patent pending, one conference paper in, and then maybe another paper coming out, strictly based on that one conversation. And I'm married, so so there
it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. So anyway,
I think we had a question.
And this one is more life related, and this was from our professor. You know him, John Kimesis. This is more life related because we talked a lot about career. This is.
There's an on switch.
Oh, there you go. Hello? Hello? Okay, so you're going to be making a lot of life decisions as you're graduating, as you're trying to decide to go into industry, to go into academia. When you're trying to make these tough decisions, this is what I've been asking my professor as I sat in his office and trying to figure out my life. He said, do what makes you the person that you want to be in 5 years. Just ask yourself, will this opportunity help me become the person I want to be in 5 years from now? You can take this in any direction you want, but it really helps figure things out.
Don't forget to live life in the whole array of trying to figure out what's an opportunity and what's not. And Vijay already said that, but live life today, live in the present moment is a very Zen thing to say, but it really helps to, if tomorrow were your last day, have you lived today? Have you done things that you would have wanted to do? So take time out to talk to your parents if you delay those calls forever.
I think we had a question over there. Go ahead.
So going back to what like VJ said, you know, he thought that he knew that like what it said on that paper was like, you know, like you have to follow the rules, but you learned out like in life that if you just make a call, you know, things might work out. Like, you know, I know like as young people, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, those kids think they know everything. What was something like you thought you knew back in college that you have then found out that like, wow, if I had only really known the truth about like how this situation worked, my life might have been better, quicker, or different.
I'll rephrase that question to say as to, if I had really known in school that it was okay to just live and not worry about every single exam and stress out like crazy about, I'm a straight A grader, all like grades A all through, so I would worry about every single exam and would question, oh my God, how will this exam go? I'm being very honest here, so how will this interview go? Sometimes it's okay to just believe in yourself and then go out there and see what happens. And I think the only time I've become comfortable with that is, and being okay to accept failure, is after doing improv, actually. Because before that, I was like, oh, if I fail this, then this will happen, and then this will happen. And in my thinking, I would have created an entire castle of disasters that may or may not happen. So no one taught me in school. In fact, I was taught by a school system that if I have to succeed, I have to get everything right. And I don't think I could have learned it in school, but I wish I had.
One thing that I'll kind of go ahead and say, and I'll couch this with, I have a background in athletics, and it's like this is kind of like a core tenet of sports psychology, is that you always have to put the past out of mind, and one of the things that I think we all find ourselves struggling with at times, and this kind of gets into anxiety and stress, is we find ourselves a lot of the time stressing out about the past, and this may be a missed opportunity or something that we didn't do as well as we want. The thing is, as engineers, there is one thing that we know from control systems, and it's that reality is causal. There's nothing that we can do that will impact the past. And this is kind of something that I've had as kind of the ray of light, the beam of guiding knowledge over the past few years, is that I can't change the past. So the way that I'm going to the way that I'm going to deal with this is just whenever I realize that there's something I wish I hadn't done in the past, I just take that as knowledge and use it to boost my knowledge moving forward and use it to add to my worldview. Because we can't change the past, but we can impact the future.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of want to expand on this question, or your guys' answers is, have you guys ever faced like major roadblocks in your life and wanted to give up in your career? And how did you guys get past that?
So going back to actually my first internship at Microsoft, when they handed me the stack of C# code that I had never seen before, that was really frustrating because for me, I went through an entire cycle of why am I here? You hired me as a hardware engineer and you just thrown code at me. There are people here, I know hundreds of applicants, probably thousands of applicants that could do this better than me, faster than me with a shorter on-ramp. So there are moments when you're going to have moments of, couldn't someone else do this job better? But at the same time, as I said before, that was kind of what they were looking for, and I figured that out afterwards. So you're going to have stressful times in your career. If you can find a way to learn from them or to figure out ways to work through them, people will recognize that. And as I would tell my intro students back when I was a TA in college, it's okay to ask for help. Most people want around you, especially if you're on a team, want you to succeed. They want the team to succeed. So if you are struggling, you don't have to kind of just suffer in silence. Because usually, as Stuart said, there's someone on the team who could very easily help you, and that way you don't have to spin your wheels.
I was thinking since it's almost 5:30, they're setting up dinner. You have to indulge me just a little bit. I would really like to take the young alumni out, get a picture, have all of you then come behind them or around them and so forth, because I would just really like to have everyone in this group have that as a memento of what this is all about. And that way you can track each other down on Facebook a little bit easier.
And it will be in your presentation in a few years.
Are you okay with that? I mean, most of them
Let's do it.
stay at least for a while. So you continue the conversations, but let's just take a break. Let's move outside, because it's much better. We need fresh air.
Also, just as a quick announcement to all of you, if any of you have resumes physically on you that you want, like, Microsoft to take either for your own career or because you want to do an event, please give them to me. If you don't physically have your resume, I can give you a card and you can email it to me and I will pass it along. And that way you have a contact at recruiting that can help you with on-campus events.
I'll also add that any of us here would be happy to put you in touch or volunteer as speakers in your respective schools. So find the contacts through Chris, and all of us young alumni are happy to be useful resources. Thank you.
So we're ready.